Now we're going to look at cloud failover for a site disaster. Here we can see we're going to be focusing on the Infrascale cloud, where we've got our cloud appliance for our secondary. And we're going to bring up a bunch of machines on there, and we're going to use orchestration to do that. Now, we've talked about orchestration, but I haven't really shown you anything about orchestration. So before we can do the demo of showing you what that site recovery looks like, I want to go ahead and take a second to show you what setting up orchestration looks like and how easy it is to configure.
So the IDR cloud is one of the 9 data centers you have around the world, is that?
What was it?
The IDR cloud, where the appliance is located, is in one of the 9 data centers around the world?
Yeah, we have some of those data centers are used for the Infrascale cloud for disaster recovery. But we do also have the option to do public and to do the user's own data.
And you can position an appliance in a public cloud?
We use our virtual appliance for that.
Oh, so it's a virtual appliance.
Yep. So for instances like that, or if you wanted to bring your own hardware, you would use a virtual appliance.
Right.
So you do have a software-only version. All right. So we're going to go ahead and log into the dashboard, but this time it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to go to Manage DR Sites and Appliances, but this time we're going to say we want to manage the cloud side. Now this is something important because you always have access to your cloud side. You don't have to call us. You don't have to say, hey guys, we're going to do a DR test. Now here when we look, we've got this page, which is our boot overview. We still have all the same functionality we do locally. But we now also have that orchestration tab. Now right now it's blank. We'll go ahead and set up orchestration. Well, what is orchestration? It's the ability to control the order and timing of when you're going to boot up machines. So first we're going to boot up a Windows server. Then we'll wait 2 minutes. Then we'll put in a group. And with that group, we'll boot up our database server. So we'll boot up an Oracle server, and we'll boot up a SQL server.
What about IP addresses and stuff like that? I mean,
so we'll get into the DR LAN configuration here right when this is done building out. So now we've built out. We just hit save. And now we have a repeatable process to be able to do our DR testing. When we go to DR LAN, this is where you can control how you want the IPs to be handled. We have outbound access we can turn off, which you would do probably if you wanted to do some testing. You can do your subway, your gateway. We can do DHCP and IP restore. So we can give it the same IP it had on-prem if you guys are going to be using the same subnet. If not, you would need to do a little bit of configuration on what you want the cloud side to be. Now that we've set that up and we've saved it, we can go through and look at what it would be to start up orchestration and how that works.
and that case is running everything on the appliance?
Correct.
All those VMs effectively are being brought up and data is being restored on the appliance?
Correct.
So because it's your appliance, the restore is, fast. I mean, almost
So, yeah, it's not so much a restore as a traditional restore. So here we have nothing running in archive or active. We'll go over to orchestration. We'll hit play. And then we'll jump back over and we can see that those 6 have dropped in. They've dropped in that order. And again, I sped this part up a little bit because we put 5 minutes worth of waiting time in there. And we didn't want to just sit here and watch 5 minutes of waits. So this took about 9 minutes and some change to boot all 6 of these machines. Now, I say boot instead of restore because we're not restoring anything. We're just mounting that VMDK up on top of our appliance and booting it up.
And this is empty machines, right? So like in reality, if it was a production machine, there'd be lots more data.
Well, they're not necessarily empty machines. They really do have the applications they're saying they have, but yes, they're not multi-terabyte databases sitting on top of that Oracle database or that SQL database.
And with the way you do this is you would pull this, I understand pulling it over and recreating the application stack, but then do you also replicate the data as you're backing it up to the secondary site that you've created?
We do. So each time that you take a backup or create a recovery point, we replicate that recovery point up to the cloud if you want to. You could also choose only to replicate one recovery point per day. So your cloud's only got one snapshot each day, but it's got all those individual ones for on-prem recovery.
And what types of security do you have available? So you like FedRAMP and all of that kind of things, your cloud, do you have those certifications?
We can talk about certifications later, and we will touch encryption in 2 slides, I think. So here we
How
can
do
see
you manage all the differences between hypervisors? I mean, there are some functionality that are very, very peculiar to VMware, and probably you are running on KVM or something like that. So, meaning that there are a lot of network changes, a lot of driver changes at the
so the first
guest
step,
level.
The first step when you power it on, that little gray square with the circle, is when we're injecting our drivers. So we would put our drivers in and then power it on. Now, in the cloud, we've got some tricks for doing the networking and giving it back its IP address using DHCP assignments, because something like Windows is going to default to DHCP once it boots. It's got a new NIC. So we've got ways to work around that. For VMware and Hyper-V, we have integrations we built. For the rest of them, we would install an agent and treat it as a physical machine. For example, Nutanix. We work with Nutanix, but you would install an agent on each guest and back it up and recover it as if it was a physical box.
So Chris, is this a sandbox environment at the moment? Or is this a full active primary?
So this is booted in the disaster recovery network,
Right.
and then this is how you would access that network. So we
Okay,
give
so
you
it is-
different options.
It's slightly sandbox for the time being then?
Correct. You've got to somehow tie the clients that want to get to those servers in, and that's where we offer point-to-point software-based VPN. So that's what I used for 20 years. You just fire up the client, hit connect, and now you're on the network. We can do public IP addresses. We can do site-to-site VPN. We can do MPLS lines.
So for disaster recovery purposes, let's say it's been a major disaster, you could be running off your cloud box for several days or weeks. There isn't a way to promote that out to or bring that back onto a third-party site. So let's say you want to move it into Azure or AWS, for instance. You wouldn't be able to do a restore into there.
So if I understand what you're saying is being able to take what's running in our cloud and restore it to, we can absolutely do that. But you would have to deploy like a virtual appliance there to be able to replicate that data over to there. So you'd still have to move all that data.
I'm just thinking because you're going to want to have that off-site facility available in case there's another disaster sort of thing in a period of time.
So yeah, you could absolutely do that. You just, basically we would take the cloud side, we would promote it to being the primary.
Yeah.
And then we would attach a secondary to wherever.
That's what I was thinking, yeah. Okay.
So why do we recover in the cloud? I'm in Florida, so I always bring up hurricanes because that's the #1 thing that happens to Florida. I was actually talking with one of my customers in Puerto Rico, and they mentioned to me that since December to the middle of January, they've had over 1,000 earthquakes in Puerto Rico. And a couple of them were 6.0 and bigger. And he was like, I really prefer hurricanes to earthquakes. I was like, that's a weird statement. He's like, well, I can be proactive with a hurricane. I can fail out of the way of it. I know when it's coming, and I can fail back, so I can mitigate the amount of time I'm going to be down. The earthquakes that hit Puerto Rico, one was at 4 a.m., one was at 6:30. So they both woke him up out of bed. Within minutes, power went out. Then he had to see if his cell phone still worked, if he could get to the data center, if he needed to fail over. So he likes to be proactive over reactive. And it was kind of an interesting point to me because I've been doing this for a while, but I hadn't thought different types of disasters are vastly different for your disaster recovery plan.
So you can run your virtual appliance on a separate cloud, on which you have KVM, on which you run virtual machines, right?
So there's an
kind
aspect
of,
there with having nested virtualization supported by that cloud.
Okay, but maybe it's. I didn't understand. Can you restore directly on Amazon, Google, or Microsoft Azure?
Yes, but there is going to be, that's a bigger conversation as to how you would do that. But yes, you can recover to a different place than you backed up from. We would need to replicate the data over and then recover whatever is native for that environment.
Okay, so you always need a component which is your appliance to replicate the data, keep the data there in a fashion that is not optimize for that cloud. I mean, you are not using their object store, for example, which is
Correct.
very,
It's gonna be-
very inexpensive compared to EBS on Amazon, for example. And then you replicate again all the data on external AMIs or whatever they are, so sounds complicated.
Well, and that's why a lot of people use our cloud, because with our cloud, all of that is included. There's no ingress, no egress. We don't charge for CPU. We don't charge for RAM. We don't charge you to be booted there. We don't charge you if you go past a certain amount of time or do a certain amount of DR tests. So I think that example, valid example, is kind of an extreme example. You lost your site, you went to the cloud, now you want to have a third site that you're replicating to that's now basically you would be migrating to the cloud.
Okay, let's say then
Yeah, but
that
that's-
you support it, but actually you prefer not to do it. I mean, it's not something that you recommend to your customers.
It's not what the product was initially designed for, is to be able to help you with the migration from on-prem to cloud.
Is that something that will be in future a thing?
It's absolutely in the roadmap to have way more cloud stuff.